The problem in the church isn't that they're broken people. The problem in the church is that they're self-righteous people, that they're judgmental people. If we could deal with the issue of self-righteousness and judgmentalism, no matter how broken the church is, she would actually be healthy.
Say, I've accepted Jesus in my life. What do I do next?
One is you need to tell someone. Tell 3 people before you go to bed. You don't have to make sense of it. You don't have to have all the answers. All you're sharing with them is your own personal experience and your own decision to trust Jesus with your life.
You were listening to the Mindshift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Back in LA. We were just in New York for a week.
Just in New York for a week. We had a really productive week. We went out there and we prepped for Mosaic, which we have on Wednesday nights once a month, and that was really amazing. There was not a single chair or ounce of concrete on the floor available for another human being. So we're having to do 2 gatherings the next time we're in New York City in August 27th. So if you're hearing this, wherever you are in the world, get to New York City. Mosaic New York City's meeting, August 27th. You'll be there. I'll be there.
Yep, and if you're one of the people who came in and couldn't find a place to stand and had to leave, we apologize, but come back next month. Don't give up.
Yeah. Do whatever you want to do. But get there. Make sure you get there. Okay, so we had that. And then we were in the studio in the factory with our amazing development team, Arturo and Jess, in New York City and Brooklyn. And that was really fun. And so we finished out kind of essentially what would be like the collection for Ghost Artifacts.
We have an entire collection.
We have probably have somewhere around 12 to 20 pieces.
Any projection of when you think we might actually launch?
Yeah, I think it'll be the end of the first week, the beginning of the second week of September.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
right,
everything. So like really, I've been documenting kind of the fourth quarter of this last, we're on the fourth down. What's the
2-minute drill?
With the 2-minute drill, what is it like? We're at the goal line.
Yeah, you're in the red zone. We're in the
red zone. We're getting close. So just locking in hang tags and bags and liners and just things that we've kind of thrown in that are extra, like the duffel bag that we're working on and a couple other things. So, but once that's settled, and it should be settled today, tomorrow.
So if you're one of our faithful listeners,
yeah,
keep listening. And somewhere in September,
Ghost Artifacts
is going to launch. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, you can follow it on Instagram. I'm on there. If you work for TikTok, help me out because my Ghost Artifacts TikTok got locked. It locked me out. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know how, but we'll figure that out.
And they won't let me set up a store on TikTok.
They won't. It's insane. So we're working on it.
What's going on?
We're getting a couple
of
things
TikTok.
Okay, so with that said, if you're listening to this episode, we have done a few different episodes. One, our last week's episode was with Arturo Castañeda, who is the owner of Storytellers and Creators. He's a part of our development team in Brooklyn. He's really taught me a lot. He's been a great friend to you, a great friend of the fam, and his that podcast was really interesting. Though we kind of cut it short. I felt like we could have gone for hours on his background and his faith and kind of the world that he comes from and the direction they're headed and the new brand. So that's the first of a few conversations we'll have with him. But today we wanted to talk about being new to faith.
Okay.
What does it look like when you're new to faith? What are the questions you ask when you're new to faith? What are some things that people should do when you're new to faith? And I'm hoping that this is a helpful, insightful, and inspirational episode where we can have some fun. And if you're new to faith or have any friends that are new to faith, this is a great episode to send to people as a reference point. And we're looking forward to it. Oh, and if you're a part of the Mindshift podcast community, we want to invite you to join the Mindshift podcast community. What does that mean? I'm a part of the podcast. I'm a part of the community. We have an online space. I don't know what the link is again. Is it school.com/? No, it's just no, you go to link in bio. Go to our Instagram. The link in bio, you can click Mindshift Pod Community. Basically, it's $25 a month. You get access to private episodes where we talk mostly about politics or things we don't want to get canceled about, where we go on a deeper dive on some of the subjects we do here and we respond to questions that you guys ask. So we do a once a month kind of public episode for the most part where people are able to zoom in, ask questions, and have a bit more engagement on the back end. Just go to the link in the bio at our Instagram, MindshiftPod, or go to mindshiftpod.com and you can join the community there. Before we dive in, check that out. Very, very excited for this episode. Let's go.
That's awesome. And one of the things we're going to be doing in the weeks and months to come, I mean, you've been trying to get me to do this for a long time, is, to have interviews and conversations with guests. So we're going to bring a few guests on with us. And then I think we're both going to spin off a little bit. You're going to interview some of your friends. I'm going to interview some of my friends. And We're going to expand our Mindshift community.
Yeah. Should we change the name again?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. Well,
I like Mindshift.
I like Mindshift too.
It's a good name.
Okay, so we're just gonna do different themes. So some of them will be spiritual, some will be about the Bible, some of them will be about politics or clothing, artists, friends. So you'll kind of see that on the front tag of the episode. It might say, "Sit down with Arturo Castanero, fashion designer."
I also think you should do like a tastemaker thing.
Okay.
Because you know restaurants, coffee, culture, film. You really are a connoisseur.
I just
of culture.
I like things, so it's fun. But yeah, I would love to do more of those conversations. But right now, New to Faith, an episode of New to Faith.
All right.
Here we go. Okay, so what would be some of the first things that you would recommend someone who is new to faith to do? Because, we have these gatherings at Mosaic or different churches around the world or different, whether it's a concert or summer camp or one of those revival nights where most gatherings for people who are evangelistic have a moment where, some people call it the altar call. Some people call it, that response to faith, where at the end of a message, people are given the chance to raise their hand and step into a relationship with Jesus. And I want to talk about what happens once you raise your hand. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you find this podcast? How are you able to be equipped and find the tools to go deeper and build a stronger faith?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's important to say that there's nothing magical about like raising your hand in a service or something like that. It's just really a way to help you make an external action that reflects an internal commitment.
So what do you mean by that? Because it says declare with your mouth, believe in your heart. And so I'm making a public declaration to step into a relationship with Jesus. There's not magic in that?
Well, there's not magic in
raising
your hand.
You just don't like that raising your hand, you're already arguing the semantics of it. Okay, so say I raise my hand at one of these nights, maybe, or I wake up from a dream and I've accepted Jesus in my life. What do I do next from a positive perspective?
Well, what you do next is
the greatest decision that you'll ever make.
That's true. And I think several things. One is you need to tell someone. Like find the people closest to you, your friends, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, your bestie, whatever it may be, and have 2 or 3 people that you share, that you just open up your life to Jesus and invite them to change your life. Because when you share it with someone else, it really does both clarify it for you and it makes it concrete. And so the moment you declare it, and it's funny because when you declare that Jesus has changed your life, when you declare that you've given your life to him, it's far more powerful when you're declaring it to someone who knows you. And you're letting them know that this is what I just chose to do. It just nails it down.
But that conversation can be scarier than the stepping into a relationship with Jesus part.
Yeah, and so I always tell people, look, before you go to bed, if you've invited Jesus into your life, if you raise your hand, if you made that commitment, tell 3 people before you go to bed. And then it just feels natural. And it's also exciting. And it's, when you fall in love or if you won the lottery, you would probably tell the people you love the most.
Yeah, I met a girl.
Yeah, and so the way you would respond when you just had the most exciting thing happen to you in your life is the way you should respond. And find a couple of people, 2 or 3 or 4 people, and tell them. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to make sense of it. You don't have to have all the answers. All you're sharing with them is your own personal experience and your own decision to trust Jesus with your life. And then there's some practical things you can do. One is, there's this fantastic app, the Bible app, that has all these different translations.
YouVersion.
Yeah, YouVersion. And so start reading the Bible every day and pick a version that's easy to understand. You could choose the New International Version or the Children's, Bible, or the
King James if you're feeling Shakespearean.
Well, I would kind of stick with the translation that's easier to understand.
Like an NIV or
NIV or and don't worry about, people go, well, that's not a translation, it's a transliteration. Doesn't matter. Right now, what you need to do is get to know who Jesus is. So start in the Gospel of John and just take, you don't have to read it all in one day unless you're super, intense and passionate. You could just read a section at a time and just do what you've talked about doing, about listening to it, extracting the truth that it's trying to pass on to you, and then finding a way to apply it to your life, and then pray about it, and so I would just read a passage of the Bible and say, God, what are you trying to teach me about who you are and about who I am? And that's the triangle for me. Read the Bible and ask 3 questions. What is this teaching me about God? What is this teaching me about me? And then what is this teaching me about life and how I should live it? And if you do those 3 things, you'll be able to always have an application from every passage of Scripture that will be incredibly activated in your life. And then just read the Gospel of John, pray every day. And praying is really simple. It's just having a conversation with God. And at first, just share with God what's on your heart, what's going on inside of your life. And God already knows that. He just needs you to make the connection with him so that you create an environment where he can actually act in your life. And so when you pray, you're actually inviting God to be an active part of your journey. And by the way, asking is just a small part of praying, like asking God for things. Inviting God to speak into your life, to give you wisdom, to give you insights, that's so much more important. Because really the power of prayer isn't how it changes your environment. The power of prayer is how it changes you.
It talks about in the scriptures, it says pray without ceasing.
Yeah.
And in Psalm 1, it talks about meditating.
Yeah.
So you have these different kind of, paths. I think now if you were to go into a church and say you need to meditate, I think most people would say it's unbiblical. But I think it's very clear that it may be if it's unbiblical, it was definitely in the Bible. Mm-hmm. So, and you talked about raising your hand. There's no magic to raising your hand.
Yeah.
I would love for you to break down why, once is enough. You step into a relationship with Jesus, you don't need to raise your hand again and again and again. But you could start it with raising your hand isn't magical.
Well, you've gone through several different experiences there. And so I think it's important to almost hit on all of them. And like prayer and meditation, raising your hands, all those things. So
let me ask you a question. How many times should you pray a day?
You should pray continuously. And the way you do that functionally is whenever you realize you're not praying, pray. Whenever something begins to stress you out, pray. Whenever you have a decision to make, pray. Whenever, you're, processing information, invite God into the conversation. And so be always open to hearing from God and always open to speaking to him. And so it's not being compulsive. It's really just being dynamic. It's like breathing. And you don't think about breathing, you just breathe. And as you grow in your faith, you want to just connect to God as if it were just like breathing, where you're living in that intimate relationship with him. And so when you're talking about like raising your hands and does it matter? It does matter in that we're physical creatures, right? I think I just saw the other day that humans are designed for 7 or 8 hugs every day. That's actually when we have the best mental health. So you need to realize we're designed as incredibly physical creatures. When we're depressed, we put our head down. When we're proud, we put our shoulders back. And our faces immediately carry on the characteristics of sadness, anger, depression, happiness, joy, excitement. So our entire muscular development is connected to our emotional well-being. So it shouldn't surprise us that the Bible talks about like raising your hands and, when you're celebrating and praising, or to get on your knees sometimes when you're praying. Those physical expressions are a physical connection to the posture of your heart and your soul. And so early on in my faith, I was on my knees a lot. I was physically on my knees because it was the best way to posture my heart into a space where I go, God, I'm here on my knees asking you to, to be real in my life. And so the physical aspect of it isn't incidental. It's actually very essential to our lives. And so I would say those are some of the dynamics is, read your Bible, apply it to your life, pray as often as you can remember, and more. Share your faith with people in your life and let them know how you're doing and what's happening. And those are some of the dynamics, and being in community. That's why church is so important. Now in the business world, they always tell you become the sum total of the 5 closest relationships in your life. Well, the church has understood that for thousands of years, that you become like the people you do life with, which is why church is so important. And by the way, it's why it's so important that you pick a church where people attend that are the kinds of people you want to become like. And not all churches are the same, and there's no perfect church, but you can find a place and go, I like the joy these people have. I like the hope they have. I like the kindness that they carry. I like the courage that they express. And that's the kind of community you want to get into. So it's really important to understand that you become a part of that community, become shaped by it, and you also help to shape it. So those are some of the dynamic things I would do every day. And then there's always nuances, like when you talk about the difference between meditation in the way that the Bible talks about it and the way we experience it maybe in common culture. Because when you're more informed from a Buddhist perspective, the goal of meditation is to move toward nothingness, to think about nothing. And what's ironic is that the human brain isn't really designed to think about nothing. And the Bible actually tells us that, what we think about is who we become. And so if you're trying to think about nothing, you actually become nothing, which is the goal of Buddhism, is that you move toward nothingness. But what the Bible wants you to do is meditate on truth. And so when you're a follower of Jesus, you do meditate, but you're meditating on truth, because what you want to be is shaped by that truth. And so the truths that you're meditating on are the ones that are going to seep into every soul, every cell in your body. So if you're meditating on the truth of integrity and how to be a person of truth, and if you're meditating on kindness and gentleness and how to be a person of compassion and tenderness, that begins to seep into every cell in your body. And so you need to understand that the power of meditation from a biblical perspective is you meditate on the truth that you're trying to absorb into your soul.
So I want to go back to the hand raising, because because there's multiple physical expressions that are very important in the scriptures. And so, we adopted this idea that you need to raise your hand in the altar call to accept Jesus in your life. Really, that's something we brought, or not we, but like the church brought into play with audiences so they could count to know how to give lives to Jesus. But really, in the Bible, how did people step into a relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, it was in everyday life. And so I think part of the challenge is that when you read the Bible, people come to faith outside of buildings in just everyday life. And most of us only know people, quote, coming to faith inside of buildings, which is in a very real way, a very unhealthy way of understanding faith, because it contains faith to a sacred space like a building rather than the sacred space of everyday life. And so when you look at the New Testament, you go, how did people come to faith there? It was in everyday life. Someone asked them and they said yes, and it was wherever it was. And when I came to faith in a tradition where they invited you to go forward, and it was like an altar call, and you had to walk forward. And they took you behind in a little room and talked to you and prayed with you. And that was a very terrifying, ordeal,
Yeah.
But it was very powerful because you made a very conscious choice. You had to make a physical choice to step out of your seat, usually a pew, walk down an aisle and say, I want to give my life to Jesus. Then they would take you back and talk to you and pray with you and everything. To make it easier, people started saying, you can just raise your hand. In a sense that it was just trying to be
like meet you where you're at.
It's a little more sensitive. It's a little more convenient, and but maybe not as dynamic. Because one of the things I really love is that dynamic moment. We've done that at Mosaic many times, where I would say, if you're here and you're ready to follow Jesus, I want you to stand. And, when just one person stands, you just feel the tremendous courage of that moment. And then all of a sudden other people began to stand, because courage inspires courage. Faith inspires faith. And then when we would even do that with baptisms, we'd say, if you're here and this is your moment to publicly confess Jesus as Lord. And then we'd say, come now. And it would be a spontaneous call, and people would just come running. And it was a beautiful thing. And I admit, historically, I have loved those moments where your heart's pounding against your chest, and you're confronted with, how badly do I want this? Will I find and muster up the courage to step out publicly? Because I kind of figure, if you don't have the courage to be public about your faith inside of a church building, you'll never have the courage to be open about your faith outside of the building. And so I don't want to go, oh, look how easy it is. And then you step outside and now you with your friends and in your everyday life, and you haven't built the spiritual muscles to live that life well. And so I kind of like creating that dynamic tension as much as possible. And
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So baptism.
Yeah.
How important is baptism in the process of coming to know Jesus and living a life with Jesus?
I think people get confused about baptism. Some people actually think that baptism is what, quote, saves them. And that's not biblical. And what baptism is a symbol of a important reality. It's a baptism like a spiritual wedding ring. When you wear a wedding ring, you're not married to the ring. The ring is a symbol of who you have a relationship with. And for me, baptism is best explained as it's the wedding ring that expresses that you've given your life to Jesus and Jesus has placed his life in you. And so baptism is a public declaration of a private reality. And so the order is you're supposed to give your life to Jesus and then be baptized. And so when people tell me or ask me, do I have to be baptized? And I go, no, you get to be baptized. If your question is still, do I have to be baptized? You don't have the right relationship with Jesus yet. And because you're still living a life of obligation. When you have a relationship with Jesus, you understand, oh, I get to do this. I get to be a part of this. And it'd be weird if someone says, do I have to marry her? Do I have to marry him? And the answer is no, you don't have to marry them. You have to choose to marry them. This is a covenant of love. And so that's an interesting dynamic. So baptism is a symbol. It's a water grave, literally, of a old life being buried under the water and then coming to be a new life. And so it's death, burial, and resurrection. So it's a picture of Jesus's life, death, burial, and resurrection. It's a picture of how we come to God. We die to ourselves, and he raises us to a newness of life. It's a picture of how we live this life with God, but we're going to die physically, but we're going to be raised to live in eternity. So baptism is this multi-layered symbol of the reality that we get in relationship to Jesus.
How long should you be submerged in water for it to count?
Oh, wow. Our campus in Mexico City.
No, Ecuador.
Ecuador, with Andres Gonzalez. He held someone under, was it 18 seconds?
We have to give context to this.
All right.
Was this Easter? Was it Easter?
I don't know.
It was a big Sunday.
But the way that they decided to do it was they would put the person under and then start praying for them.
Right.
And while they were praying for them, that person was under the water.
Right.
And they sent us a video.
Yeah, it was for Easter, I believe, and we were kind of acquiring all of the different videos from the different campuses around the world. And I stepped over to like the video team, and then Austin looks at me and goes, "You will not believe how long Andres Gonzalez held this guy underneath the water." So okay, keep going.
And ironically, Andres says that the guy asked him to hold him under as long as he could stay under.
Oh wow.
But I think it's also because there's a lot of and I'm going to use this phrase, like Catholic in Latin America. And in his mind, like the longer I'm held under, the better it works. I'll come out cleaner. I'll come out more righteous. I'll come out,
wipe the sin away.
Wipe the sin away. So he was staying under.
Yes.
He must have had a lot of things that needed to be washed. But I think it was like 18 seconds.
It was 18 seconds, yeah.
That they held him under.
Slow 18.
And I'm in shock. So the answer is fast.
I thought he was going to start kicking his feet up. Start shaking.
Start coming
up the other way.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's important to be baptized. It's important to step into a relationship with Jesus and say it out loud and verbalize it and tell community, tell your friends, tell people, be proud of it. I always find it interesting when people say, he was outed for his faith. And I'm like, that's something that someone should never, your faith isn't your sexual identity. Your faith isn't something that you can keep. You shouldn't ever be something that you should be able to keep in a closet. There shouldn't be no outing of your faith. It should be, I'm this human. I am Aaron, and I also believe in Jesus. I'm a follower of Christ, right? And I think that the longer people wait from that step of declaration
Mm-hmm.
of a relationship to the maybe that distance between time is like the dissonance in the relationship in a way.
Yeah, my 46 years of research has convinced me that if a person doesn't share that they've come to Jesus within 24 hours, they will never share. That it is so critical that whatever you do in those first 24 hours it tends to be what you do the rest of your spiritual journey. And that's why it's so important right away to share that you've come to faith, to read your Bible, to pray, to be involved in community, to get the cycle of healthy patterns in your life right away. And I became a follower of Jesus on a Sunday evening, and the first person I actually led to faith and personally shared my faith with, explained who Jesus was, and led them in a prayer to give their life to Christ was the next Friday.
Okay, so you came to Jesus on a Sunday. You led someone in prison to Christ on a Friday.
On a Friday night.
Yeah. In college, right?
Yeah, I was in college.
Right.
And then I was baptized 2 days later on Sunday.
So cool.
Yeah. So I'd already led my first person to faith. And I still remember this. Coming to faith was seismic. It was significant. It changed my life. But leading that person to faith a week later or 5 days later impacted me more. Because on Sunday night, I received what I'd been searching for all my life. But on Friday night, I gave to someone else what I'd been searching for all my life. And giving it to someone else, I found changed me more than actually receiving it for myself. And I was never the same after the Friday night. I had to live my life helping people have this experience with Jesus.
I would really like to clip that. Can we clip that? Yeah, I love that. No, I you have such a beautiful story of coming to know Jesus, and you have such a even more of an epic story on that Friday. That's this prison story is phenomenal. I don't know if you want to share that, or if you want to just keep going through to the new to faith conversation.
Let's keep going, and maybe someday I'll come back and revisit it longer.
Okay. One of the things that I struggled with growing up was I think I was, really young, bugging you, going, I believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. Maybe as early as 4. Yeah. I believe in Jesus. And you were like, no, you don't even know how to use the restroom on your own, and I think you were pretty hard on me in that way. And that you really were, I don't know how to describe it, but you were very protective of making sure that I wasn't making a decision out of coercion or out of just adoption.
Yeah.
That it was something that I had come to know the full grasp of the weight of it. And, by the mature age of 7, you felt like, okay, for the last 3 years, you've been saying this, you're showing up, you're reading, you're doing the things. And I think, why was that such the process with me versus, if you met someone on the side of the street, it didn't matter how old they were. If they accepted Jesus in their life, you go, yes, okay.
Well, I think, first of all, it's because I'm a first-generation follower of Jesus. And I didn't really believe children could understand the gospel. So I'm just going to be straight up.
No, that's what I want.
Yeah. It's such a transcendent, cosmic, mystical decision. In my mind, a 4-year-old could not comprehend this. Because, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. So for me, it was an adult confrontation. It was my adult philosophical mind being confronted with reality and does God exist and could he possibly come in flesh and blood? And then you're at 3 years old telling me, I've given my life to Jesus, and I'm like, that's so sweet, and I loved you, and I tried to, and I affirmed you, but I didn't believe you. Not because I thought you weren't telling the truth. I thought you were telling all the truth you had.
Yes.
I just didn't think it was possible to understand enough to receive the creator of the universe into your life. So some of it was my own bias because I didn't have a background.
No, totally. I'm just curious.
And you kept telling me that you'd given your life to Jesus, you'd given your life to Jesus, given your life to Jesus. But the break point for me was when you were maybe 5 or 6 years old. And you said to me, and I remember we're sitting in a car in a parking lot in East LA, and you said, Daddy, when can I start to preach? And I said, well, first you have to become a Christian. And he goes, I am a Christian, but no one will believe me. And
Sounds like me.
that sounds like you. And that's when I felt arrested by the seriousness of your commitment. And that's when I decided, yes, you could be baptized, because as hard as I tried to make you wait to give your life to Jesus, you refused to wait. And it wasn't that you wanted, quote, Jesus. It was that you felt compelled to preach. You felt compelled to help other people find this faith. So as many times as you denied it and tried to run from it, I know that was in you, like at the age of 5.
I never denied Christ, but I definitely denied Christians.
Yes, and you also denied calling.
Absolutely. Every day I mute the calls at D&D, and I think that's a whole nother podcast of hitting do not disturb on your calling, but that's not this episode. But
call waiting.
Call waiting.
Yeah,
is your voicemail out of room?
Yeah.
No, but I would say this. Yeah, no, I remember. I don't remember that specific conversation, but I remember many conversations before and after that. I think as an adult, I felt like I met Jesus again, but it wasn't that I needed to raise my hand again, and I never did. I never rose my hand again. I rose my hand for prayer. I never rose my hand for salvation ever again. And a bit of this was and I contemplated. I told you, do I need to give my life to Jesus again? Do I need to get baptized again? I was in New York City. I was wrapped up in a lot of amazing emotions. And if you look back at that scenario, I can say firsthand, I did not grow up in a church that had a lot of peace. It was a very conflict-oriented season of life for us, because
it was a violent space.
Yeah, you were pastor of a church in the inner city, East LA. It was pretty divisive. It was pretty confrontational. It was pretty conflict-oriented. Most of the kids I grew up were in jail, rehab, drug addicted, or dead by the time they were 18. Those kids I grew up with. And then as I grew up, the church moved closer and closer to Los Angeles, to the city, to Pasadena, to downtown, to Beverly Hills, to the west side. And now we are where we are now. But I feel like that journey that I was on was, hey, I don't really like Christians, but I like Jesus. I just can't figure out why Jesus has such terrible representation.
Yeah.
And so every journey, every person who's new to faith will go on a journey of finding community, a journey of finding a relationship with Jesus, a journey of figuring out what tithing and giving means to them, what prayer and reading scripture means to them, and being spiritual and living that life of Jesus. How does one not abandon the call to love Jesus and to preach Jesus and to share their faith with people by the ramifications of community or being let down?
Yeah. The interesting thing about it is that you would think that the mess of the church is because there's so many broken people, but that's actually not the case, because humanity's broken. We're all broken. Some of us are less broken than others. Some of us are more broken than others. The problem in the church isn't that they're broken people. The problem in the church is that they're self-righteous people, that they're judgmental people. If we could deal with the issue of self-righteousness and judgmentalism, no matter how broken the church is, she would actually be healthy. Because the unhealth of the church, and the part that really affected you negatively growing up, wasn't that they were broken people. It's that they were broken people who acted like they were perfect and would point out your brokenness and everyone else's brokenness. And that's the irony of the hypocrisy that people talk about. The hypocrisy in the church isn't that we're imperfect. We are imperfect, And if I got to wait till I'm perfect to be a pastor or to represent Jesus, it's not going to happen. The crux of the hypocrisy is to not acknowledge the mess in your own life and to try to feel superior by acknowledging the mess of someone else's life. And so I think that was a dilemma, because I look back, even at the church that we were part of when we came here. We have more broken people in the church now than there were then, because we have more people. So there's more brokenness. We don't have necessarily more healthy people. We have fewer judgmental people. And the real problem in that church wasn't how broken people were. It's how self-righteous and condemning they were. And if you can deal with that issue, you can have a church where people want to come and they feel safe and they can grow and be nurtured. Because the moment you stop judging each other, you start helping each other.
It's so unique. We have to wrap because we have another thing. But I guess a part of that combo, the thing I said earlier of like why I never raised my hand again or why I didn't get baptized again was because what happened at between 4 and 7, when I did get baptized at 7, that sticks.
Yeah.
Like I'm still quote unquote saved. I'm still quote unquote set apart. I'm still quote unquote like accepted Jesus into my life. And I think we can live life and go, Matt Pagan's one of my best friends and he was Catholic and he was like, every time there was an altar call, I raised my hand.
Yeah.
Because every time
you just feel the same thing.
Because you grew up Roman Catholic. You
grew
grew up going, I got to redo this. I got to keep doing, I got to re-up, I got to resubscribe.
I wanted to do it 100 times.
And I did for when I was a kid a million times, every youth group, every middle school.
And that's the thing. There's two sides to this.
School.
One, it's good to know that once you've invited Jesus into your life, you never have to do it again. He's like forever with you. But there's also this other side that we need to almost like receive Jesus over and over and over again. Every time there's a new breakthrough, every time there's a stronghold that we need to overcome, every time we need a new level of faith, it's almost like we have to receive Jesus afresh. And that's why I stopped asking people a long time ago, like, when did you give your life to Jesus? Which was like a classic question we were taught to ask because you need to have a day, like a chronological moment.
Right. Now
I ask people, where are you in your relationship with Jesus right now? Because that's what really matters. Because, you can have someone who 20 years ago, they know they gave their lives to Jesus, but they've been distant from God for 19 years. And what's more important is where are you now? And then the other person doesn't know when they gave their lives to Jesus. They just know they're completely in. And then we get nervous because they don't know the exact day. That's just our own neurosis. Because when a person is living a vibrant, beautiful life of faith, that's the real evidence. And, so to me, I think you gave your life to Jesus at 3 and then again at 11 and probably again at like 17 and probably again at 23.
Probably again a couple months ago.
Every time you had to make a significant breakthrough in your life,
yeah,
you had to come to a new embracing of faith and of Christ in this stage of your life.
I love it.
And that's true for all of us.
It's a great combo. Thanks for sitting down and having a conversation with me. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Rate and review the pod. Subscribe to the YouTube. Share with a friend. Anyone you know that might be new to faith or maybe would benefit from a conversation like this. I want to continue this conversation, make this a series of new to faith conversations and bring up topics. If you guys have questions, join the Mindshift podcast community. Follow us on Instagram, Mindshift Pod, and ask us there. We'll see you guys next week.
Nice. Hey, love everybody.
Love you too, Dad.